Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about one of the most terrifying silent killers, stroke. According to the World Health Organization, over 15 million people suffer a stroke each year worldwide. In the United States alone, nearly 800,000 cases occur annually. But what's truly alarming isn't the number. It's the fact that many of these strokes could have been prevented if people had recognized the early warning signs their bodies were sending. No loud alarms, no clear warnings, just subtle signals. Easy to ignore, but potentially life-saving. Don't take your eyes off this video, because noticing just one early sign might save you or a loved one from paralysis, memory loss, or worse. This isn't a scare tactic. This is life-saving information. Let's get started.
I had to stop for a moment when I looked at Mr. Ray Peterson's MRI results. A 74-year-old man with a calm life, no smoking, a little gardening, and the occasional walk to the local diner. He had just returned from his grandson's baseball game when his left arm went numb, his words tangled in his mouth like thread. A mild stroke, they said. But what shocked me wasn't the stroke itself. It was the likely cause, something sitting quietly in his bathroom cabinet. A little bottle he had used almost every day for the past 7 years. You might even have it in your cabinet too. Maybe you took it this morning. Maybe it helps you sleep. Maybe it dulls the arthritis in your knees just enough so you can go for a walk with your dog. You probably thought it was harmless, even good for your heart, some people still say. But what if I told you that very pill could be the reason your brain's blood vessels are slowly narrowing, or why your heartbeat becomes irregular late at night? Every single day, more than 100 older adults are hospitalized in this country because of a silent complication linked to a common over-the-counter painkiller. Yes, common. You don't need a prescription. You can pick it up at the gas station, the grocery store. Even your neighbor might hand it to you when you complain about a headache. But behind that convenience is a risk that grows quietly with age, especially after 60, especially if you take it every day. I want to ask you something. Have you noticed your memory slipping a little more than usual? Do you find yourself reaching for a word that used to come easily? Do your hands shake ever so slightly? Or do you feel lightheaded when you get up too fast? Have you told yourself, it's just part of aging? What if it isn't? What if your body has been whispering a warning to you and you've been taught to ignore it? As a doctor, I've worked with older adults for over 20 years. I've seen firsthand how one small habit, something you believe is helping you, can slowly turn into the very thing stealing your independence. I've spoken to patients like Linda, a retired teacher who never missed a morning walk until she woke up one day with slurred speech and a blank spot in her memory. Or George, a 69-year-old jazz musician who began feeling dizzy during performances, later realizing his blood pressure was dangerously low. In both cases, the one common factor: daily use of this popular painkiller. You deserve to know the truth. Your health, your independence, your mind are too valuable to be gambled on a pill that may do more harm than good when used without guidance. I say this not to scare you, sir or madam, but to protect you, because the science is starting to catch up with what we've seen in the clinic for years. A recent study from Harvard involving over 10,000 adults over age 65 found a significant correlation between regular use of this painkiller and an increased risk of ischemic stroke, the kind caused by blocked blood vessels in the brain. Another article from the National Institutes of Health described how even moderate doses taken regularly over time can lead to a thinning of the blood in some people, while paradoxically thickening it in others, especially if the person is already taking medications like blood pressure pills or has early-stage kidney problems, which many people don't even realize they have. It's not just about stroke. Your heart rhythm is also at risk. The Mayo Clinic released a statement not long ago cautioning elderly individuals about self-medicating with this drug without a full understanding of how it interacts with the aging body, particularly how it may increase the risk of atrial fibrillation, a common but serious heart condition. Have you ever felt your heart skip a beat while lying in bed at night? Have you chalked it up to stress or maybe indigestion? Please don't ignore those signs. Your body is wise. It is speaking to you. You just need to learn its language again. Let me be clear, not all painkillers are evil, and not all uses of this drug are dangerous. But the real danger begins when you take it day after day, month after month, believing it to be as safe as water, without understanding how your aging liver, kidneys, and blood vessels process it differently than they did when you were 30 or even 50. You're not weak for needing relief. You're human. But you must also be wise. Just as we adapt our diets, our exercises, our sleep routines as we age, we must also adapt our approach to medications, even the ones we think we know. If this message has struck a chord with you, if you've ever relied on a daily pill to get through the day or night, please consider subscribing to this channel. I make these videos specifically for you to help you live longer, healthier, and happier in your own body. And leave a comment even if it's just one word. Say yes if you've ever felt uncertain about a medicine you're taking. Say 0 if this hasn't applied to you yet. Your voice matters. It helps me tailor these messages to what you truly need. Let's not take our bodies for granted. You've lived too long and fought too hard to let something small, like a hidden side effect, take you down from the inside. You might be wondering, how can something so small, so familiar, so trusted, become dangerous over time? It's a fair question. And I understand that for many of you, taking this pill is just part of the routine. You take it to ease the stiffness in your joints before walking to the mailbox. You take it when that dull ache in your lower back won't let you fall asleep. You've probably been told it's safer than prescription drugs, easier on the stomach than others, or that it might even help prevent heart attacks. But sir, madam, the full story is rarely printed on the label. Let me ask you, have you ever looked at the ingredients in your medicine? The tiny font, the chemical names, the warnings so small they're almost unreadable. You shouldn't have to be a pharmacist to understand what's going into your body. Yet here we are, surrounded by products that promise relief but don't always tell us the cost, especially when we grow older and our bodies change in ways most of us were never taught to notice. This painkiller I'm talking about, let me be transparent with you, is low-dose aspirin. Yes, the same aspirin that's been in American households for over a century. And for some people in the right situation and under a doctor's care, it can be a lifesaver. But for many older adults, especially those using it every day without medical supervision, it's quietly raising the risk of internal bleeding, heart irregularities, and yes, strokes. In my role as a doctor, I've seen aspirin do both good and harm. I once treated a woman named Evelyn, 72 years old, retired school counselor. She came to me complaining of dark stools and occasional lightheadedness. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, just little things that had crept in slowly over the years. She never told anyone she had been taking aspirin every morning just in case she said. She'd read once that it helps with heart attacks. But the bleeding in her stomach had already started. It was mild at first. Then it became serious. She lost a dangerous amount of blood before we caught it. She made it through, thankfully, but it could have been avoided. And Evelyn isn't alone. Studies show that gastrointestinal bleeding is a common side effect of long-term aspirin use in older adults. The lining of the stomach thins as we age. Blood vessels become more fragile. The liver processes chemicals more slowly. A 2023 report by the American Geriatric Society highlighted that adults over 70 who take daily aspirin without prior cardiovascular events, meaning without already having had a heart attack or stroke, may actually experience more harm than benefit. Think about that for a moment. If you've never had a heart attack or stroke and you're taking aspirin just in case, the research says you may be doing more damage than prevention. But that's not the only issue. What aspirin does inside your bloodstream is equally critical. It thins your blood. That's the point, right? It's meant to reduce clotting, which can prevent blockages in the heart. But what happens if a tiny blood vessel in your brain, already weakened by age, begins to leak? That's how hemorrhagic strokes occur. They're less common than ischemic strokes, but often more deadly. And older adults who take aspirin regularly are at higher risk for them. I once read an article from a Mayo Clinic cardiologist who warned that low-dose aspirin isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. He said, "What helped your heart in your 50s might hurt your brain in your 70s." That sentence stuck with me. Because it's true. Our blood vessels age. Our hearts change. What was once protective becomes harmful when we fail to adjust with time. Some of you may be on aspirin because your doctor prescribed it maybe after a stent or a prior stroke. If so, don't stop it suddenly without guidance. But if you're taking it on your own out of habit based on something you heard in the past, I urge you to reconsider. It's not about fear. It's about alignment, making sure your treatment matches your actual health needs today, not what they were 10 years ago. Pain is real. Inflammation is real. And yes, many older adults do struggle with chronic aches that interfere with sleep movement, even mood. I want you to be comfortable. I want you to feel well enough to play with your grandchildren, take long walks, cook, garden to live. But I also want you to be safe. There are alternatives to aspirin, safer ones depending on your condition. And more importantly, there are ways to reduce pain and inflammation that don't involve swallowing a pill every day. Sometimes something as simple as magnesium, which many older adults lack, can help relax blood vessels and reduce headaches. Or omega-3 fatty acids found in certain fish, which help naturally lower inflammation without damaging the stomach. Gentle movement like Tai Chi or water aerobics can reduce joint pain better than many medications. Even a warm foot soak before bed can increase blood flow and improve sleep without risk of side effects. You have more choices than you think. I say this with love and deep respect for what your body has carried you through. You've weathered storms, heartbreaks, hard labor, long winters. Your body deserves careful attention, now not guesswork. So if something has felt off lately, if your energy is lower, your head foggier, your balance more uncertain, don't just blame it on getting old. It could be your medication talking. Please, sir, madam, check your cabinet. Read the label. Have a conversation with your doctor. Don't accept a pill as harmless just because you've always taken it. You're not the same as you were 20 years ago. Your body is wiser, and it's asking you to listen. I want to tell you a story, a quiet, almost invisible story, one that could have happened to anyone, maybe even to you. There was a man named Carl, 81 years old, lived alone in a small white house in the suburbs of Des Moines. He lost his wife 5 years ago, and since then, he kept a simple life tending to his garden, cooking his meals, watching documentaries on birds. He had a peaceful rhythm. He wasn't the kind to complain, not about the mild swelling in his ankles, not about the occasional dizziness, not even about the headaches that came when he skipped breakfast. But Carl did something every day, almost without thinking. He took one low-dose aspirin in the morning. It sat on the table next to his blood pressure pills. He'd been doing it for years. Then one Sunday morning, Carl's neighbor noticed his front porch light was still on by noon. Strange. Carl was always an early riser. They knocked on his door. No answer. Eventually, the police were called. Carl was found slumped over in the hallway, conscious but confused, unable to stand. He'd had a small stroke. Not a dramatic one, not the kind with drooping faces or loud alarms, but the kind that quietly steals your balance and memory, that makes you feel like your own body is no longer yours. When I reviewed his case, I wasn't surprised to see the aspirin. But what saddened me most was that no one had ever questioned it. Not his children, not his doctors, not Carl himself. He thought he was doing the right thing. You see, this is the dangerous part. The small daily decisions we make the pill. We swallow the signs, we ignore the assumptions we carry from decades ago. They quietly build up. And one day they surface, sometimes in a hospital room, sometimes when we're alone, lying on the floor, unable to remember how we got there. A 2022 report from the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force confirmed what many of us in medicine have known for a while for most adults over 60. Without a history of heart disease, the risks of daily aspirin outweigh the benefits. That's not my opinion. That's national guidance based on extensive studies. The kind of studies that look at hundreds of thousands of people just like Carl. Just like you. I know some of you may be feeling anxious now. Wondering if you've been putting yourself at risk. Wondering why no one told you. I understand that feeling. And I want to tell you, you are not to blame. You've done your best. You followed the advice you were given, but now it's time to shift, to update the story, to take back control. It's not too late. Because the truth is, your brain is still healing. Your blood vessels are still adapting. Your heart is still listening to every choice you make. And when you begin to make even the smallest change, when you pause before popping that pill, when you ask your doctor the hard questions, when you start noticing how your body responds after a walk or a warm meal, your body responds. It really does. I once worked with a man named Bernard. He was 70 when we first met, and he'd been on daily aspirin for over a decade. No prior heart issues, no stroke history, but someone had told him long ago that it was good for the heart. He came to me because of bruising purple splotches on his arms, spontaneous and unexplained. After a full review, we carefully tapered him off the aspirin. Over the next 3 months, his bruising stopped. His energy increased. His sleep got deeper. He told me he hadn't felt that light in the head sensation in weeks. Was it magic? No. It was physiology. When you reduce an unnecessary stressor on the body like a blood thinner, the body doesn't need. The body often responds with quiet gratitude. Your body wants to protect you. It wants to feel good. It just needs you to meet it halfway. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Tonight, when you go to take your pills, pause. Look at each one. Ask yourself, do I know why I'm taking this? Not, did someone once tell me it might help, but truly is there a present, clear reason? If the answer is, I'm not sure, then that's your sign. Not to panic, but to open a conversation. Call your doctor. Ask if your aspirin is still necessary. Bring up what you've learned. Tell them what you're feeling, the dizziness, the fog, the bleeding gums, the slow bruises that take weeks to heal. These are signs. Your body is not silent. It speaks. And if you're someone who needs to stay on aspirin perhaps because of a prior heart event, then take it with guidance. Check your stomach. Stay hydrated. Avoid combining it with other blood thinners unless instructed. Know your numbers, blood pressure, cholesterol, kidney function. Stay close to your body like it's an old friend. Because it is. Let me say this again as plainly as I can. Aspirin is not evil. But for many of you, it may no longer be necessary. And worse, it may be slowly harming you, not saving you. That's what happened to Carl. That's what almost happened to Bernard. But it doesn't have to happen to you. This message isn't about fear. It's about empowerment, about seeing your health not as a burden, but as a garden you get to tend in your later years with wisdom, patience, and care. You've earned that right. Let me ask you something very personal. How many times in the past year have you felt faint when standing up? Not dizzy from hunger, but that brief rush, the kind that makes the room spin just for a second. Or maybe your gums bled a little when you brushed your teeth. Perhaps you noticed a bruise on your thigh and couldn't remember bumping into anything. Maybe your stool looked darker than usual, but you didn't say anything because it felt like a small thing. These are not just signs of age. They might be whispers from your blood, from your internal systems trying to tell you something isn't right. As a doctor, I'm trained to look past the surface. But what I've learned from years of working with older patients in clinics, in their homes, in emergency rooms, is that many of you already know when something isn't quite right. You feel it in your bones. You feel it when your body stops bouncing back the way it used to. The trouble is, no one always listens to you. And sometimes you've been trained not to listen to yourself either. A friend of mine, Dr. Susan Blackwell, once told me something I'll never forget. She said aspirin can save a life, or it can slowly take away someone's stability. The difference is context. She's right. If you've had a heart attack, aspirin may lower your chance of another. But if you haven't, if your arteries are still relatively clear, if your cholesterol and pressure are managed, then aspirin may actually do more harm than good. A study published just last year by researchers at Harvard followed thousands of adults over the age of 65. What they found was sobering among people who had never had a cardiovascular event. Those taking aspirin had no significant reduction in heart attack risk, but a significant increase in bleeding, including bleeding in the brain. That's what we're talking about here. Not just stomach ulcers, but strokes caused by bleeding, not by clotting. I met a man once named George 77, a retired high school principal. A proud man. Smart, skeptical. He never liked pills, but he made an exception for aspirin because he told me that's what my doctor from the 90s recommended. He hadn't followed up in years. When I asked about any recent health scares, he hesitated, then said quietly, "Sometimes I forget what I was saying mid-sentence. Not always. Just sometimes." And I thought it was just age. I did a full cognitive and neurological workup. And while we didn't find evidence of a stroke, we did find signs of microbleeds, tiny dots in the brain the kind that accumulates slowly. George had no idea. He thought he was protecting his heart, but his brain was bearing the cost. Madam, sir, these things don't make headlines. You don't see ads warning about aspirin. You won't hear many doctors bring it up unless you ask. Why? Because it's so familiar. Because for decades it was part of the medical gospel, but times change, evidence evolves, and we must be willing to evolve with it. There are better ways to protect your heart than relying on daily aspirin, especially when it's not medically indicated. I've seen dramatic improvements in patients who replaced aspirin with movement connection and simple foods. One woman I treated, Carol, 69 years old, lived with arthritis and occasional high blood pressure. She wanted to avoid statins and blood thinners, so together we crafted a program for her: a small serving of leafy greens every day, 15 minutes of walking in the morning, and 2 glasses of water before 10 a.m. That's it. After 6 months, her cholesterol had dropped by nearly 15 points, her blood pressure normalized, and her joint inflammation, which she thought would never ease, had reduced enough that she could sleep without pain. This isn't magic. This is biology responding to kindness. So if you're still taking aspirin every day and you haven't had a heart event, I urge you to ask, what am I protecting myself from? Is it the memory of a friend who died suddenly? Is it a fear someone once planted in you? Or is it just habit? Because habits can be beautiful or dangerous. The good news is they're changeable. Start small. Drink more water to improve circulation. Sleep on your left side to help your heart work more gently. Add turmeric or ginger into your meals, nature's own anti-inflammatories. Spend 5 minutes each morning stretching your ankles and wrists to boost blood flow. Rub your hands together and place them over your chest. Feel your heartbeat. Thank it for carrying you this far. Then ask what it needs from you next. And please find out what your real stroke risk is. Not from fear, but from knowledge. Talk to your doctor about getting a carotid ultrasound or having your homocysteine levels checked, simple things that give a clearer picture of your blood and brain health. Don't just rely on old prescriptions and old assumptions. Your body isn't trying to betray you, it's trying to survive. And you, with every small choice you make, get to help it thrive. You are still the author of this chapter of your life, even if it's not the beginning, especially because it's not the beginning. That means you have wisdom now, not just about what works, but about what matters. Let's use that wisdom. I want to bring you into a story that still lingers with me. There was a woman named Diane. She was 73 when I met her, with soft silver hair and a warmth in her eyes that made every nurse smile. Diane used to teach music, piano mostly, and still played every morning, hands dancing across the keys like they remembered every note ever written. Her health, she said, was decent. A little stiffness, a little forgetfulness, but she still went for walks, still cooked for herself, still kept a tiny herb garden on her windowsill. She came to see me because of a fall. Nothing dramatic. She'd lost her balance getting out of bed, scraped her arm against the dresser. But when I examined her, I noticed a bruise, deep purple, blooming across her forearm like ink in water. It spread faster than it should have. Her blood pressure was stable. Her heart sounded strong. But the more I asked, the clearer the picture became: bruises that took too long to heal, gums that bled sometimes when she flossed, a small nosebleed every few weeks. She was taking daily aspirin, just like Carl, just like George, just like millions of people over 60. We did a few tests, nothing alarming yet, but her platelets were a bit sluggish, her clotting time longer than normal. And that's the thing. Aspirin doesn't just thin your blood. It changes the way your blood responds to injury, to pressure, to stress. You may not feel it until you fall, until you hit your head, until a vessel deep in your brain bursts silently, stealing your strength. Do you remember the last time you felt safe in your own body? Not cautious, not careful, but safe, strong enough to walk unassisted, bend down without fear, close your eyes without dizziness. Because the longer I do this work, the more I believe that real healing isn't about living forever. It's about removing the obstacles that slowly, silently rob you of peace. That's what unnecessary aspirin use can do. Not for everyone, but for enough people that I can't stay silent about it. I once read an article from the Mayo Clinic that highlighted the difference between what they called primary and secondary prevention. Simply put, if you've had a heart attack, stroke, or major heart event, aspirin may reduce your chance of having another. But if you haven't, then you're in that primary group, and for that group, they found no substantial benefit. Instead, they saw higher rates of internal bleeding, emergency hospitalizations, and brain hemorrhages. Madam, sir, you are not a statistic. You are a living, breathing person. But it's important to understand the numbers because behind every one of them is someone's husband, someone's sister, someone's friend. I have seen older adults fracture a hip, bleed internally, all while thinking they were doing the right thing. I've held hands in the ICU and listened to families whisper, but she never missed a dose. She was doing everything right. The problem is not the aspirin. It's the assumption that what worked for someone else will work for you, that what helped at age 50 will still help at 70. Your body changes. Your risks change. Your medicines need to change too. If you've been taking daily aspirin for years, I'm not telling you to stop immediately. That can be dangerous too. What I am asking gently but urgently is that you talk to a doctor you trust. Ask the questions you never dared ask. Not, what should I take, but what can I let go of? Because sometimes health isn't about adding more, it's about subtracting the things that no longer serve you. Let's talk about the alternatives. You can protect your heart in ways that don't involve blood thinners. Movement is powerful. Studies from Johns Hopkins have shown that just 30 minutes of brisk walking 5 days a week can reduce heart disease risk by up to 40%. Not marathons, not gym sessions, just movement. You can do that, even in your living room. And food, one of my favorite prescriptions. A handful of walnuts, a spoon of olive oil, berries a few times a week, a little red onion or garlic. These foods aren't just flavorful, they help keep your blood vessels clear, your inflammation down, your circulation alive. Even your breath is medicine. I teach some of my older patients to practice slow, deep breathing twice a day, 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out for 5 minutes. You'd be surprised how quickly it calms the nervous system, lowers blood pressure, improves oxygenation. It's free. And you can do it right where you're sitting. Diane, the music teacher, started doing just that. We tapered her off aspirin carefully. We adjusted her routine, and after a few months her bruises stopped spreading, her gums stopped bleeding. She still had some arthritis, yes, but her balance improved. She walked with more confidence. She even started teaching again, just one student once a week. But her face lit up when she talked about it. And that's what I want for you. Not just fewer pills, but more life. More time feeling clear, grounded, stable. More days where you can get out of bed without fear. Where you can remember the names of flowers, the tune of a song, the face of someone you love. You deserve that. So tonight, when the house is quiet and your body's resting, I want you to sit with one thought. What does my health need from me right now? Not 10 years ago, not 20, but right now. And then promise yourself that you will find out. There's a kind of quiet pain that many older adults carry, not physical, but emotional. It's the feeling of being left behind by a world that moves too fast. Doctors rush through appointments. Children grow up and move away. The body doesn't respond like it used to. And every day there's a new health warning, a new don't eat this, a new medication that supposedly fixes everything. But when you sit down and really listen to your own heart, it's not asking for pills. It's asking for clarity, peace, a body that feels like home again. I know this because I see it all the time. I hear it in the questions you whisper when the clinic door is closed. Do I really need all these medications? What happens if I stop? Am I still strong enough to live on my own? You are, but only if we make choices that honor your strength, not numb it, not gamble with it. Let's come back to aspirin, not just the pill, but the belief behind it. Somewhere along the way, many of you were told that taking aspirin daily was like putting on a seatbelt, that it would prevent the big one, the heart attack, the stroke, the moment when everything could fall apart. And for a time, that was the best understanding we had. But science doesn't stand still. In fact, it's one of the only things that insists on evolving. We now know that for people over 60 who have not had a heart event, the risks of daily aspirin often outweigh the benefits. A recent analysis published by the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force confirmed what many of us have seen firsthand. Older adults who took aspirin daily had higher rates of gastrointestinal bleeding and hemorrhagic stroke. The kind of stroke caused not by a blockage, but by bleeding in the brain. It's a silent, sudden kind of devastation, often without warning, sometimes with no second chance. You may not feel anything while it's happening, just a strange fatigue, a moment of confusion, a word that won't come out right. By the time you notice, it could already be too late. That's why I keep talking about this. Because the stakes aren't theoretical, they're real. And so are your options. I met a patient recently, Thomas, 68. A big guy, worked construction. Most of his life never liked talking about his health. His daughter finally dragged him in after he started forgetting small things, directions, appointments, names. We ran some labs, checked his blood pressure, reviewed his medications. And guess what? Daily aspirin. No prior stroke, no heart attack. But a long-standing fear planted by a coworker years ago that aspirin would keep his blood clean. We did a brain scan. It showed early signs of cerebral microbleeds, little dots hardly visible unless you know where to look. His memory loss. Likely connected. His energy dip. Probably related to mild anemia from slow internal bleeding. We slowly took him off. Aspirin changed his breakfast to include more iron-rich foods, added gentle cardio to his mornings, and within 2 months, his thinking was sharper. His color improved, and his daughter cried when she told me he remembered my birthday again. This is what healing looks like. It's not always about the cure. It's about getting back what matters. You still have time to make powerful changes. Small ones even. Start with your pantry. Look for whole natural foods that protect your vessels. Salmon spinach, a little dark chocolate olive oil. If you can't chew raw veggies, easily steam them. If you don't like fish, try flaxseed oil. Even simple oats, not the sugary kind, but plain oats with a drizzle of honey, can lower bad cholesterol and improve blood flow. Sleep is medicine too. A recent study from the National Sleep Foundation found that older adults who get 6 to 8 hours of consistent high-quality sleep show better memory retention and lower stroke risk. It's not about sleeping more, but sleeping better. Turn off screens early. Dim your lights. Let your body wind down slowly. And don't underestimate connection. Loneliness increases your stress hormones, your blood pressure, your inflammation. Just one meaningful conversation a day with a neighbor, a friend, someone at the store can lower your risk of heart disease. Your heart is a social organ. It responds to love. So if you've been taking aspirin daily and you've never had a major heart event, please talk to your doctor. Not to accuse, not to panic, but to clarify. To make sure your body is getting exactly what it needs and nothing it doesn't. Because your future doesn't belong to fear. It belongs to choices made from wisdom, from care, from trust in your body's ability to adjust. The journey doesn't end here. In fact, this might be the moment when your health begins to turn a quiet corner, not because of a miracle drug, but because of a miracle decision. To listen, to act, to believe that change is still possible. I want to end with something simple. Not dramatic, not alarming. Just one truth gently placed in your hands: your health after 60 is not a sentence, it's a season. And seasons change. They soften. They slow. But they still carry the power to bloom. You see, I've spent years sitting beside beds in quiet exam rooms on the edge of hard conversations. I've watched people cry, not because they were sick, but because they felt confused. Because they weren't sure anymore what was helping them and what was harming them. And when it comes to aspirin, that confusion is incredibly common. The messages we receive about health can be so mixed, so loud, that we forget to hear the small voice inside that says, "This doesn't feel right anymore." So let me ask you directly. When you take that little white pill day after day, do you take it with confidence or with hesitation? Because if it's the second, if there's even a sliver of doubt, then you deserve clarity. Not guesses, not assumptions, clarity. We've walked together through stories, science symptoms, and alternatives. I've told you about Diane, about Thomas, about the warnings that institutions like the Mayo Clinic and the National Institutes of Health have started emphasizing more clearly than ever. If you've never had a stroke or heart attack, taking daily aspirin after 60 may no longer be in your best interest. And I've offered you something else. Movement, food, breath connection. Real tools that do not come with the same risk of bleeding, that ask more of your presence and less of your plate. But here at the end of this journey, what I really want to leave you with is a kind of emotional peace. Because fear is not a healthy motivator. And so many of you, sir, madam, you beautiful, resilient souls have been making health decisions based on fear. The fear of dying, the fear of decline, the fear of becoming a burden. But I promise you, fear is not required to take care of yourself. You can choose love instead. Love for the mornings you still wake up. Love for the way your fingers move your thoughts, form your eyes, still scan the world for beauty. Love for the life you still have. In one of my favorite studies I ever came across, this one was from Harvard School of Public Health. They found that older adults who felt empowered in their health decisions had better outcomes than those who simply followed doctor's orders blindly. Not because they rejected medicine, but because they participated in it, because they asked questions, because they understood. So let this be your turning point. If you are taking aspirin, ask your doctor. Given my history, is this still right for me? If you're not on aspirin, but someone you love is especially someone who's never had a heart event, gently encourage them to have that same conversation. If you're dealing with high blood pressure, cholesterol, memory changes, or just that sense of fading strength, ask yourself what else might be possible. A walk in the cool morning air, a bowl of real food, a breath held a little longer, a hug held even longer still. Because survival is not the goal. Wholeness is. Independence is. Feeling alive in your own body, that is what we're fighting for. I once had a patient, a 70-year-old woman named Joan, who came into my office and said, "I don't want to just be alive, I want to be here. Really here." And she meant it. She changed her meals. She took dance lessons. She cut down her medications slowly, carefully with my help. She smiled more. Her blood pressure dropped. Her memory sharpened. And every time she came in, she brought a new story, a new sparkle, a new recipe. That is what it means to reclaim your health. And you can do it too. So if this message resonated with you today, if something deep inside you said, "Yes, I needed to hear this," then I invite you to stay with me. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, share your story in the comments. Let this be a place of truth, of guidance, of community for those of us who still believe that aging can be beautiful, powerful, and deeply intentional. And if it didn't resonate, if you're still not sure, that's okay too. You are allowed to take your time, but promise me one thing. Don't go back to automatic living. Don't take another pill without knowing why. Don't silence your intuition in favor of outdated advice. You have the right to understand, to adjust, to ask for better. Your body has carried you through decades of laughter, tears, change, and challenge. It has been loyal. It has adapted. It deserves your kindness, your listening, your respect. Love your body not out of fear of illness, but because it has been loyal to you for so many years. And if no one has told you this lately, I'm proud of you for being here, for reading this far, for caring. Let's keep walking this path together.